Ani buju. Manzan apkinige go na be minwa bam gijik indijnikas. Kinabe gok shabigaj watan donjaba. Gnoje gigo do dem. And my name is Isaac Murdoch, and I'm from Serpent River First Nation. My clan is the Fish, and I come from a very beautiful place. When I was a child, I remember listening to the old elders talk about stars. And they were amazing storytellers, and they had so many amazing gifts to share with us. I'm so thankful for them. They used to say, I'll tell you the story about the stars, but you have to go out on the land to understand it. You have to go fast to understand that story. And oftentimes we would have to go fast just so that we could understand the true meaning of that story. And that's how knowledge was transferred down. It was transferred down from the stars to the children. And that's how they learned. I think that it's really important to understand that these lands have requirements, that the earth has requirements. And part of those requirements are to understand how to live here. And one of our greatest teachers is the stars. And so I think it's beneficial for all people to learn about the stars because all of our teachings are there. And the indigenous people still hold these things very close to their heart and know a lot of the information about that. And it's very beneficial for everybody to learn this.
For most of human history, we have had clean water and a pristine environment. We lived in harmony with nature. There were times, however, when we lost our way and became greedy and selfish. Each time that happened, the animals and the environment suffered, as well as the humans. Each time that happened, we learned a lesson. Once again, we have lost our way. The animals and the environment are not the only ones suffering, so are we. There is hope if we can learn from the lessons in this story.
A long time ago, the Anishinaabe were lowered here from the stars. And when they came here, they were given special instructions on how to live here. They were told, always be very, very respectful to each other. Don't be greedy with your stuff. Don't create war with other people. Be good. Be very, very kind and gentle. That's what they were told. Of course, that's how they were. They were like that for a long time. They were also told, the animals, they're the ones that are going to lead you on earth. Follow them. They're the true leaders of that world down there. Don't start making your own trails in the bush. Only follow the animal trails. The Anishinaabe were okay with that. The people were okay with that. So of course they just lived their lives along those animal trails. But somebody got greedy. Somebody decided to make their own path. They made their own path into the bush. And they broke the rules. And they started to get more blueberries. They took those blueberries and they started to pile them up in their wigwam. And they started to go moldy. They started to rot because they picked so much and they didn't want to share any of them. Well, somebody else seen that. They thought, well, they can pick more berries. I can pick more berries too. And they started to pick more berries. Then somebody else started to pick more berries. Then somebody else started to pick more fish. And then it was moose. Then it was beaver. Then it was birds. Everybody started to take more than they needed. They started to make their own trails. And everything started to rot in the village. There was just bones scattered all over the place. Fat was just rotting. Berries were just being wasted. That's what happened. And then they started to fight amongst each other. They lost their way. They stopped believing in that governance that the animals gave them. And of course, they had made their own trails. But there was a power in the sky looking down on earth. That power they call Abonene. the wintering spirit. The wintering spirit looked down on the earth and thought, you know what? Those humans are being greedy. I gotta kill that greediness. So the wintering spirit started to blow its breath down on earth, trying to freeze the humans and kill them, so that of course the greediness would leave. But there was a power here on earth that was just as strong as the old man, if maybe not even stronger. It was the birds. And the birds sang their songs. Medicine cast it all over everything, even into the hard-to-reach places. The old wintering spirit could not freeze the earth as long as those birds were there. He tried to blow his breath, try to freeze everything, but those songs pushed his breath back into his mouth. And so the old man decided to capture all those birds, store them in his wigwam up in the stars, so that those birds' medicine wouldn't be able to stop his breath. That's exactly what the old man did. He got all those birds, put them in a bag, stored them in his wigwam, and then he blew his cold breath. And everything started to freeze. All of the animals started to die. The humans started to die. The plants, everything started to die and perish. That old man was just happy and he just kept on blowing. So the animals, they started to organize amongst themselves. And it was one animal, the fisher, that said, we need to have a big council meeting. And Fisher went and handed tobacco to all the different animals in the forest and to the two-legged and said, meet me in 4 days. Of course, 4 days later, Fisher made a fire. And one by one, out of the darkness, the animals came and formed a big circle. They had a huge, big council meeting. And it was discussed on what to do, on how to save the earth. The two-legged never showed up to the meeting. Those are the only ones that never showed up. They didn't show up because they felt bad, because they knew that they lost their way and they created this horrible thing that was happening. So the animals, they talked for many days. And it was agreed that 4 of them would go on a warrior's quest to save the earth. Fisher was chosen to go. Otter was chosen to go. The lynx was chosen to go. And of course, Porcupine was chosen. And what their plan was to climb a mountain. Once they got to the top of that mountain, they were going to jump to the stars, zigzag across to where that old man lived. Get those birds, bring them back down to earth so that their songs can melt everything. And then try to negotiate with the old man on not to blow his cold breath on the earth and freeze everything. So that was their plan. So one by one, they went off into the darkness and they started to climb this high mountain. Once they got there, they grabbed Porcupine by the arms and legs, threw Porcupine up into the sky. Porcupine was going to the star world. But just before it got to that land, it hit a power. And Porcupine couldn't make it to the star world. And of course, Porcupine came down to the earth. And when it landed on its hands and feet and it busted them. That's why porcupines have very swollen feet today and why they wobble when they walk. It's to remind us of what happened a long time ago when we lost our way and we started to be greedy with everything. The next animal to make that jump was the otter. Otter tried to jump, tried to bust through that power, tried to make it to the star world, but that power was too thick. Otter couldn't make it. Otter came down, and when it landed, it hit a mountain and slid on its stomach all the way down. That's why otters slide around today. It's to remind us of what happened a long time ago when we became very greedy with our food. The next animal to make that jump was the lynx. Lynx was strong, so Lynx took a running jump and tried to bust through that power using its its powerful head. And it smashed into that power and it couldn't bust through. And when Lynx landed back down on the earth, it hit a big sharp piece of ice and it cut its beautiful long tail off. And of course, that's why Lynx has a little tail today. It's to remind us of what happened a long time ago when the human being started to go to war with each other. And that's why they look like they got punched in the face. That lynx, he hit that power with his face. Look at that lynx next time, and you'll know why its face is all squished in and why it has a little tail. The only animal left was Fisher. Fisher knew if it was going to do this, it had to give something. It had to make an offering. So it dug around the ice and snow, and it found 6 frozen berries in the ice. They were bear berries. And Fisher grabbed those 6 berries and held them up into the sky and said, "Help me on this warrior's quest to save the earth," and threw them into the darkness, hoping that the powers of the universe would accept them. And Fisher jumped. When Fisher jumped, it looked up at the sky and it seen that there was a crack in that power. And Fisher hit it just right. And of course, it busted a hole in the sky. They call Boganogijic, the great hole in the sky. And Fisher busted through and was in the star world. Fisher looked across the sky and quickly zeroed in on that old man's wigwam and noticed that there was a big crane guarding it. Fisher thought, that crane has a big mouth. If I try to go near it, it's going to tattletale on me. The old man's going to know that somebody's after those birds. So I have to do something different. I have to try to silence that bird. So of course, Fisher climbed down that hole in the sky, got down to the earth, and started to get a whole bunch of gaundakbagu, spruce gum, the sticky stuff off the tree. Fisher got a whole big gob of that sticky tree gum and climbed up through that hole in the sky again, zigzagged across to where the old man was. Of course, Crane was really watching, but Fisher was sneaky and snuck behind Crane. Crane turned around and Fisher was there with that great big gob of spruce gum and shoved it right into Crane's big mouth. That Crane couldn't say anything. How could it? But it tried. It opened up its stomach and it was trying to push air through it so that it could scream loud. But the only noise that came out was "Gah!" Just enough for the old man to know that something was outside. Just enough for the old man to know that maybe somebody was after those birds. So in the wigwam, the old man turned around and grabbed his bow and arrow. And when the old man looked back out, he noticed the bag of birds were gone. Fisher had already went in there and grabbed that bag of birds and was running across the sky. The old man was furious. Fisher got to that hole and started to pour those birds down that hole. Those birds all came down to earth singing their sacred songs. They started to heal everything. All of the ice started to melt. Fisher's happy. The plan is working. And then all of a sudden it heard a noise that would ring through the ages. It was the cracking of the old man's bowstring. The old man had him lined up with his bow and arrow and shot one arrow at him. Oh, that old man, his arrows were so powerful. He could go to the end of the earth, no problem, and they always hit their mark. Fisher tried to jump knowing that arrow was coming, but that arrow got Fisher right in the tail. And of course, Fisher just died and went belly up in the stars. The old man was happy that he killed Fisher. The old man was so happy. The old man knew all he had to do was go back to his wigwam, get a bag, and get all those birds again, and blow his cold breath and freeze everything. The old man knew there was going to be no more heroes. So that's what he was going to do. He went back to his wigwam, went and grabbed a bag, was ready to leave, when something happened. All of a sudden, 6 mysterious lights started to come down from that smoke hole on top of his wigwam. And when they lowered, they started to turn into human form. Each one of them had a red berry in their hand. And they told him, "We are the 6 powers of the universe, and we've seen everything from a distance. We've seen how the humans were being greedy and how they tried to waste everything, how they became a war people. But we also seen the animals and how he tried to freeze them and how he kidnapped those birds. And we don't think that's too cool. So we've made a decision. For half the year, you can blow your breath, just to remind the people that they have to be kind, that they have to share what they have if they're to survive. And for the other half of the year, we're going to let the birds sing their beautiful songs so that life can flourish." And that's what they decided. And to commemorate Fisher for what it's done, we're going to turn Fisher into stars. And they turned the Fisher into the Big Dipper. So in the springtime, you'll see the Big Dipper in the sky, running across the sky from Buganogijic, pouring those birds down. And of course, all life flourishes. Then in the fall time, Fisher's on its back. Blood drips from the tail where it got shot by that arrow. And the blood that paints all the trees red. And the old man blows its breath, and it freezes everything to remind us that we have to be good to each other, that we can't be greedy and overtake what we need. Then in the springtime again, it's running across the sky like this. That's what we were told, and I believe that to be true.
Today, we are suffering a massive ecological crisis caused by human beings. We are in a global crisis that will require a global response to help heal the Earth. Let's find the good in each other and focus on the strengths that we each have. Together, we are unstoppable and can achieve anything. Let's unite for the Earth and for future generations. We can do it, and we will.